Please rise as you're able. The Holy Gospel according to St. John, the 20th chapter. Glory to you, O Lord. Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the tomb. So she ran and went to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved, and said to them, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him." Then Peter and the other disciple set out and went towards the tomb. The two were running together, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He bent down to look in and saw the linen wrappings lying there, but he did not go in. Then Simon Peter came following him and went into the tomb. He saw the linen wrappings lying there and the cloth that had been on Jesus' head, not lying with the linen wrappings, but rolled up in a place by itself. Then the other disciple who reached the tomb first also went in, and he saw and believed, for as yet they did not understand the scripture that he must be raised from the dead. Then the disciples returned to their homes. But Mary stood, weeping outside the tomb. As she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb, and she saw two angels in white sitting there, where the body of Jesus had been lying, one at the head and the other at the feet. They said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" She said to them, "They have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him." When she had said this, she turned round and saw Jesus standing there, but did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? For whom are you looking?" Supposing him to be the gardener, she said to him, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned and said to him in Hebrew, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Jesus said to her, "Do not hold on to me, because I have not yet ascended to the Father, but go to my brothers and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene went and announced to the disciples, "I have seen the Lord." And she told them that he had said these things to her. The gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. You may be seated. So how can it be Easter when it's still so very dark? That's the question that's on my mind. The first verse that we heard in our gospel, the beginning part of it is, early on the first day of the week while it was still dark, much like it's dark right now. For a lot of folks, Easter is not going to be until tomorrow morning. Lots of folks love the sunrise service. I can't stand a sunrise service. Jesus is still raised at 9 a.m. But the vigil, here we are, we're in the dark. For us, it's the night before. What are we doing celebrating Easter? You got the historical thing of, the Jews believe that the day begins at sundown, right? So there's that part. But it's still dark. How can it be Easter when it's still dark? The world has a lot of darkness in it. You got this war going on in the Ukraine. There's horrible atrocities taking place, and now we hear about this general that's been brought in and who has this reputation of just terrible things. It's dark in the world. How can it be Easter when it's still dark? On average, nearly 20 people per minute are physically abused by an intimate partner in the United States. More than 10 million men and women each year. It's pretty dark in the world. How can it be Easter when it's still so dark? We still have this virus that's killed over 1 million people, at least here in this country, and many more in the rest of the world. And there's talk about a possible another surge, another variant. We don't know what surge we're on. I've lost count. It's dark in the world. How can it be Easter when it's still dark? And in 2020, the last time these statistics were gathered, 37.2 million Americans were in poverty, and approximately a third of those in poverty are children. It's dark in the world. How can we have Easter when it's so dark? It's a good question. All of our readings this evening are set in a context of darkness. All of them. And then there's one reading that wasn't part of our reading that really relates to this as well. Just real quick, going through this. Genesis 1, the story of creation, right? How that starts. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep. It was dark. And it's exactly where God acted. God spoke, "Let there be light," and there was light. Why? I think it's related. John 1, if you're familiar with John 1, we usually read that at Christmas time, right? The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it. It relates. Our second reading was about the flood. The flood, you've got all this sin going on, right? And it's a dark time for humanity. And I know we've got the story here of God saving Noah and the animals, some of the animals in the ark. And there's all this rain, and it's dark. And God brings forth those he saved in the ark and opens the door and sheds light on them. We've got the testing of Abraham. Can you imagine? I want you to sacrifice your own child, your only child. That seems pretty dark. That's really dark. And yet, even in this story, a light is provided. They bring the flame, and the angel stops Abraham as he's about to sacrifice his son, and a ram is provided to do a sacrifice. Exodus story, it's pretty dark. The Israelites are up against the water. The army of Egypt is coming. There is no escape. They have not seen the movie The Ten Commandments. There's no escape. It's dark. What's going to happen? We're going to get slaughtered. They're complaining. We should have just stayed in Egypt. And God provides a way out in the midst of darkness. Isaiah. Oh, well, gee, Pastor, this one's actually sounds pretty full of light. Ho, everyone who thirsts, come to the waters, and you have no money, come buy and eat. Come buy wine and milk without money, without price. That sounds pretty good, Pastor. Where's the darkness in this? Context. Isaiah 55 is the end of what we call Second Isaiah. It's the time when the Israelites are in captivity in Babylon. It is a dark time. Isaiah is giving a prophecy of hope, a light in the darkness that says that this is going to happen. Ezekiel, Valley of Dry Bones. They're in captivity. It looks bad. Israel is dried up like a valley of dry bones. And yet, God is the one who acts, who breathes life into these dry bones and gives them life. Jonah, the parable, the story is about this prophet who is sent to go to Nineveh, which is the capital of Assyria. Assyria is the ones who conquered the northern kingdom of Israel, the last place in the world that Jonah wants to go. That's his homeland. He doesn't want to go and offer salvation to his enemies. He wants them to be crushed. And yet God sends him. The story will go on, and God will provide salvation for the people of Nineveh. God works in the midst of darkness. And finally, our reading from Daniel. King Nebuchadnezzar sees himself as a god, creates this golden statue, and demands that people are going to worship it. And when Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego refuse to do so, they get thrown into a fire. And while fire is bright, this is a dark time for those that worship God. And it's in the midst of that that God provides a way out. How can it be Easter when it's still so very dark? God's been doing this for a long time. And in the midst of darkness, God acts. God provides a light, a way out. Because light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it. One of the things I read recently was the thing about resurrection, especially when we get here to this gospel reading early on the first day, while it's still dark, the thing about resurrection is that God's future has already begun to break into the present world order. That's what Easter is about. Not about some mythical, far-off, distant time that we might experience or whatever. It's about God breaking into our time, messing with it. In the darkness, turning on the light, giving hope, providing what we need to get through the times of darkness, giving us a light, turning us into a light that others can then see what God is up to. We're invited to participate in what God is up to, especially in the midst of the darkness. God puts a light into each one of us to shine out. The world has a lot of darkness. There's a lot of people who feel hopeless, who feel lost, feel forgotten. We're called because sometimes we're those folks too. God shines a light on us. God shines a light into us. God shines a light through us to shine into other people. This is what Easter is about. A light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it. And it was early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark. And God shines a light. Thanks be to God.